This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Kurdish anger inside Turkey is growing as Ankara's troops spend a sixth day battling fighters from the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, in northern Iraq. Well, Baghdad has issued its strongest condemnation yet, saying the presence of Turkish troops on its soil is unacceptable and they should go immediately. Well, fears are now growing that the fighting could escalate beyond the current level. Well, in the southern Turkish city of Van, pro-Kurdish demonstrators have clashed with police. It's traditionally an area where there is a lot of support for the PKK. It follows Monday's pro-Kurdish demonstrations in Diyarbakir, but also ended in violent clashes. Our correspondent Huda Abdulhamid is there. She says Turkey's Prime Minister is promising the country's Kurds a number of reforms in a bid to quell the unrest.
Prime Minister Erdogan earlier said that this military offensive was only targeting PKK fighters and bases in northern Iraq and not the Kurds there. He also said that this offensive will be paired up with major economic investments here in southeast Turkey. He said that there will be also major democratic reforms. What the Prime Minister is really trying to do is keep the Kurds who have voted for him during last July's election on his side. As this offensive goes on, more and more Kurds are getting angry, more and more Kurds are going down to the streets to express their feelings. The Prime Minister says they are allowed to express their feelings. The reality is that we have learned that some of the demonstrators that were on the streets here yesterday were already taken in custody for questioning. People here do not believe the government. People here say that at the moment, if they say that they are Kurds, they will get imprisoned. So they would always say that they are Turks. But anger is mounting. Disenfranchising is mounting, and people, the Kurds here, feel that the old days are back all over again. Huda Abdulhamid, Al Jazeera, Diyarbakir in southeastern Turkey.
Huda Abdulhamid there. Well, over the border in northern Iraq, our correspondent James Bays has been to some of the areas where the fighting has cut off entire villages.
This is about as far as we can get to the scene of some of the fiercest fighting. We've come along this road, but we can't go any further from here, and the reason for that becomes pretty clear when you look down here. This bridge has been completely destroyed. It was destroyed by the Turkish military by aircraft earlier on in the Turkish offensive. There's no other way to get from here across to the other side of the river, where there are two villages which are now completely cut off. They are the other side of the mountain up there. And we understand that about 5 or 6 kilometers from here, on the other side of the mountain, there has been some fierce battles. There's been some shelling heard here by the local Kurdish security forces in the last few hours. But what we don't have any idea of is who's taking the casualties. Both the Turkish military and the PKK giving very different figures of the death toll. And as you can see for yourself here, it's very difficult for us, the journalists, to get anywhere close. James Bays, Al Jazeera in northern Iraq.
They left fear behind and looked forward to an optimistic future. They are Mauritanian refugees returning from exile in Senegal. This news comes after the Mauritanian Authority in Nouakchott allowed the refugees to return home. The Soui family was among one of the last Mauritanian families returning home. The family expressed optimism and said they will rebuild their damaged home and move forward towards a better life. Mahmoudi Mohammed reports from the village of Dis in southern Mauritania.
Amidst fear from the past and hope towards a better future, the family of Ahmed Soui is waiting at the last inspection point before setting foot on Mauritanian soil. The family is 100% Mauritanian nationals, which is sufficient enough to allow them access into the country. Many of Soui's former neighbors started to arrive at this camp, which was established by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees.
I returned to my homeland after a long time of living in exile. My neighbors came to greet and welcome me home, which alleviates some of the pain I have.
Mauritania belongs to the Arabs and the Africans, and no one can divide us.
Inside the tent, several entertainment parties were held for the refugees. In addition, the camp's administration and human rights organizations are providing the refugees with their basic needs until they find a permanent solution for the problem. The refugees have returned to their villages, including to this run-down village, where the homes have nothing left but bad memories brought back from the year 1989. Ahmed Soui couldn't bear looking more than once at the rubbles of his home. Meanwhile, Ahmed's sister wandered around the home, where each rock tells the story of a displaced family. Many of these damaged homes have become playgrounds for the children and places for the animals to rest and dunes for the wind to blow.
In an attempt to clarify the picture and help explain the situation along the Pakistani-Afghan borders, especially in Swat Valley, the Pakistani Defense Ministry organized a tour for the media of the region. Meanwhile, the Pakistani Army announced that it has regained control of 90% of the territories previously under the control of armed groups in Pakistan's northwest region of Swat. This news comes after the Pakistani Army expelled armed Islamic groups from the area. However, the head of military operations in Swat admitted that the Pakistani Army has failed so far to arrest the leaders of the armed Islamic groups in the region.
After weeks of bloody confrontations between the Pakistani army and armed fighters affiliated with the Movement for the Enforcement of Islamic Laws in Swat Valley, the army announced that it has regained control in most villages and towns in the region. Once known to be one of the most touristic destinations in the country, the Pakistani army used helicopters and heavy artilleries to pound the positions of armed fighters in the region, forcing them to flee. In addition, the army killed dozens of rebel fighters and captured dozens of others.
If you watch carefully, you will realize the strategic importance of these hills. You can monitor and control adjacent towns and villages, including the areas of Imam Dari, Kasfandi, and Gorbandi, which were previously under the control of armed groups. By capturing these strategic hills, we are providing protection to the civilians in these villages. The rebels were forced to leave their positions and flee the area.
The military superiority of the Pakistani army, which is larger and better equipped than the rebels, has helped it regain control in the region. In addition, the success of army efforts to rally support among local residents in Swat has helped it achieve its goals of regaining control of the region.
This offensive was launched on November 24th. The army regained control of 90% of the areas previously under the control of extremists, which are still controlling 10% of the region.
Despite these successes claimed by the Pakistani army, the head of military operations in Swat admitted that the army has failed to eliminate the leaders of radical groups in the region, where some continue to operate secretly.
Maulai Fadlullah is hiding out in Swat, and he keeps changing his hideaway. We are still pursuing him. Several armed fighters were killed and several others were wounded. We've isolated the rebels and forced them to flee. We will continue pursuing them. However, we have not succeeded so far in eliminating the leadership of the armed groups in the region.
While the army confirmed that it has regained control of 90% of the territories previously under the rebels' control, control, it admitted that its mission will not be easy and it may take a long time to complete, just like its offensives in Waziristan. From the peak of this mountain, the armed fighters launched their attack against the Pakistani army in Swat Valley. Also on the peak of this mountain, Pakistan's rebel groups established their military bases and training camps, where they trained their fighters and maintained control over adjacent villages and towns. Now that the Pakistani army is once again in control of this region, it has an opportunity to expand its control to all the territories near the foot of the mountain. For Al Madar program, Jamal Ismail, Abu Dhabi channel, Swat Valley.
في 22 فبراير من عام 2006
On February 22, 2006, an Arabiya reporter and my colleague, Atwar Bahjat, stood in front of the camera presenting her last report. A few seconds later, she disappeared into the darkness. Atwar Bahjat was not the only journalist who paid with her blood. She was one of 227 journalists who lost their lives in Iraq during the past 5 years. The birds that fly at night are always afraid of the light. The fate of journalists and reporters is to seek out this light. Their fate is to also pay the price with their blood. It appears to be that the beacon of truth is fueled by blood. We present this episode of Manufacturing Death to honor the spirit of Atwar Bahjat and the hundreds of journalists who created fear among the birds of darkness.
في أحد أيام شهر الحب والسلام والمودة هرع الناس بعد سماعهم.
One day, during the month of love and peace, people were horrified by the sounds of explosions, which were unusual to the city of Samarra. They were shocked when they saw what happened to a historic site that stood the test of time and tumultuous events. The site, the shrine of the two Askari Imams, peace be upon them, was cowardly destroyed. At the time, Atwar, a native of Samarra, was in Kirkuk, the city of coexistence. Once she heard the news, she rushed to the site despite warnings from her colleagues advising her not to go. She said her famous words, which are still imprinted in people's minds because of their sincerity.
We are still at the entrance of the city. We are outside the northern entrance of Samarra city. The entrance remains closed. A number of families who left the city in the morning are with us now. They have not been able to enter the city. There is news from inside the city that a number of people have been injured.
الغادرون كانوا بانتظار أطوار في سامراء.
The cowards were waiting for Atwar in Samarra. Their dreadful hands assassinated the messenger of truth. They stopped Atwar and her crew from telling the truth, which she saw from a close distance.
أو صورة الحقيقة التي شاهدتها عن قرب.
هي مناضلة صحفية كان لها من الوضوح والمواقف.
She was a fighter for the truth. As I recall, she had clear and daring positions when she was working at the Af'a magazine and other satellite televisions. Her work was a source of pride for her, and we all remember her honorable stance when she refused to say anything bad about one of our senior religious authorities. She quit her job, which was her only source of income, because she put public interests ahead of her personal interests. We know her not because of these positions alone. We also know that she had a pure spirit, noble morals, modesty, professionalism, and she made sacrifices.
The news of the assassination of Atwar and her colleagues was a big shock for her modest family. Atwar provided them with the only source of income.
I do not have any other sisters. I swear, I do not have any other sisters. What can I do for the rest of my life? She died so young. I swear Atwar was too young to die.
مكتب العربية في بغداد فتح أبوابه.
Al-Arabiya office in Baghdad opened its doors to journalists who came to offer their condolences. Only a short time earlier, they lost Ali Al-Khatib, Ali Abdelaziz, and Mazen Al-Tamizi, and 10 others who work for Al-Arabiya channel. Hundreds of other journalists died while trying to tell the truth, which created an environment of fear.
إن المصاب الذي أصابنا هو بالتأكيد مؤثر غاية التأثير، لكننا نرى أن الرؤى أصبحت سوداء أمام أعيننا لأن شبح.
Of course, the tragedy had a big impact. However, we feel that we might be targeted at our jobs and our homes, not only while we are trying to cover one event or another. The assassination of our dear sister, the prominent journalist Atwar Bajat, is in effect a huge loss for truth. It is a loss for someone who was professional, unbiased, and exhibited noble morals. This woman was active in advocating morals, values, and humanitarian issues.
التي تمتعت بها هذه الامرأة الناشطة في الأخلاق، الناشطة في القيم، الناشطة في الاعتبار الإنساني.
أطوار لم تقتل لشخصها.
Atwar was not killed for personal reasons. The mission of the killers did not end with her killing. Her funeral and the people who participated in it were not even spared. More than 100 journalists showed up at her funeral in defiance to the threat of killings and kidnappings. They decided to participate in the funeral even though they knew they might never return. At the time there was a curfew, but that did not stop the dreadful hands that were waiting for the funeral. The battle did not end even when more soldiers arrived to the scene. The soldiers were not targeted. The journalists were the only targets.
We need military support. We were holding the funeral procession and on our way to transport the coffin to its final destination, the gravesite where Atwar Bajat is to be buried. She was killed in a painful incident. As I said, the roads are closed. The security forces are not allowing cars to pass. These security forces came with us so we can pass through. Senior officials from all sides were asked to help out, but only after a few hours of fighting was the funeral procession allowed to continue its path to the Qaraq grave site. The funeral was then forced to stop at Abu Ghraib area in western Baghdad. It turned out that the shooting had stopped temporarily, but it was enough time to prepare a booby-trapped vehicle, which was placed on the side road and intended to eliminate the rest of the journalists. The only mistake that the journalists had made was to seek the help from people who turned out to be the worst killers.
في موكب التشييع بعد وفاتها بعد ما إنه نزلت إلى
During the funeral procession, before her coffin was transported to its final destination, we passed by a vehicle. Then we entered. This vehicle was not there, but when we came out, I noticed it. I do not understand how the car got there because all the roads were closed off due to the curfew. The car was booby-trapped. The car was only 1.5 to 2 meters away from me. I saw the car and noticed that there was no driver inside. As soon as I finished telling my colleague that there was no driver, the car exploded. The security guards were exposed to the fire as the images show.
وموجودة هم صورة الحماية بس هم بها كانت الألم ألم يعني.
There were two sources of pain. First, The pain of the late Atwar Bahjat, may God have mercy on her. The second is the pain that you see, the bloodletting in Abu Ghraib. This is me, I was unconscious. They took me to this medical facility. Why was Atwar Bahjat killed? What did this transparent woman do to deserve this?
The journalists were the only ones who paid the price that day. 4 of them were martyred and 6 others were injured. However, journalists continue their path. Many journalists were killed, but their mission has not ended. Those who do not take risks will forever remain unknown.
Lebanon has become a country of colors and flags. Every street in each neighborhood has its own color. Hundreds of different flags are hung at entrances of neighborhoods and inside homes. Regrettably, the Lebanese national flag has little presence in the face of party flags. Every neighborhood now has a party or political identity, and often even religious and sectarian identities. For this reason, and in order to preserve the presence of the Lebanese flag, it shall remain raised above every citizen, religious sect, or party. It is our identity, and through it, we cross the borders to the rest of the world. In respect to this flag, we will watch this special report from the News This Morning program.
We are all for the nation, for its greatness and its flag, the green Lebanon, its prosperous villages, and the granite rock of its mountains. This is the country where we were born and raised, listening to Rahimi Brothers' songs. This is the dream of the nation, which is embodied by Fairuz's voice. As history and events have passed, there was only one flag, which grew from the blood of our martyrs to teach us to be steadfast, just like the green cedar, so that our roots will reach every grain of soil in Lebanon. As history has passed, the Lebanese flag united us during struggle and independence. For 3 years, this flag returned to fly in the squares to unite all the citizens of the nation and increase their attachment to their country. This was the result of the many fallen martyrs who defended the country, the green Lebanese cedar. Recently, however, the streets of Beirut are witnessing a major division based on colors, party banners, and flags. The streets have turned into mini-states. Some gatherings have been transformed into party feuds, where you never see the Lebanese flag. Some of the martyrs' coffins have been wrapped in party flags, as if their loyalty is not to Lebanon, but only to their party. The increased number of colors and parties should be an indication of a healthy democracy. However, at this time, democracy is being transformed into street duels and an imposition of opinions at the expense of the Lebanese flag and loyalty to the nation. The blood of the martyrs of the independence revolution and army are wasted. When considering the party flags, we must remember the importance of unity under the Lebanese flag alone.
Nobody loves their country. Everyone loves themselves and their leaders. When there is loyalty to the country, only then will everyone raise the Lebanese flag. Nobody knows their country or the value of their nation. When people grow older, they begin to know the value of their nation. When people immigrate abroad, they know the value of their country.
During the Nahr al-Barid war, everyone raised the Lebanese flag only. The world saw images of the Lebanese flag alone being raised and the Lebanese army. Today, there should only be the Lebanese army in the streets and squares.
Is there anything more beautiful than the Lebanese flag? It is the most famous flag. They say it is more famous than a flag burning. The flag alone, the green cedar.
Today, men and women are divorcing because of party affiliations. This is unacceptable. It is wrong. This is the reason behind our destruction and that of Lebanese society.
The citizens of the nation united under the Lebanese flag. For the sake of the Lebanese flag raised in the squares, we must unite under it. So in the end, we're all for the nation and its greatness and its flag, so that our country's flag returns and waves over every banner and every flag.
Although at the beginning of the month, the Turkish parliament approved legislation which allows women to wear the hijab or head covering in educational institutions, the debate continues.
Although the academic semester is beginning in a new way this year, these young women tried to enter the university wearing the hijab. However, they were prohibited from entering. Many of them had no other choice other than to remove the hijab or leave the university. Only 4 days are left for Turkish women who wear the hijab before they can enter educational institutions without being legally prohibited from practicing their religious rights, including wearing the hijab.
I will follow the decision of the university president and take off my hijab and enter.
University presidents are taking advantage of the next 4 days until February 29th in anticipation of the Supreme Court approving the law allowing the wearing of hijab at educational institutions. Opponents to the law are depending on the possibility that the Supreme Court may not approve the law.
The change in the constitution does not permit us to let girls wearing headscarves to enter the university because the previous verdict by the Supreme Court prohibits the wearing of religious symbols within educational institutions. So preventing these girls from entering does not violate the law.
In Turkey, the issue of hijab is one of the most prominent issues facing Turkish society, which is predominantly Muslim. 2/3 of Turkish women wear the hijab, which Ataturk followers and secularists consider a veil over the intellect that will block Turkey's path to becoming a member of the European Union. Naveen Afyouni, Al Arabiya.
A Hamas-run television channel in Gaza is pulling in viewers through a brand new children's character, a bright pink rabbit named Assoud. But as Jackie Rowland reports, the bunny's cuddly appearance disguises an overtly political message.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. This is children's broadcasting as produced by Hamas-run television in Gaza. But don't be fooled by the colourful scenery. Instead of songs and stories, the show serves up political ideology disguised as cuddly animals. The latest character to join the programme is Assoud the rabbit, and he comes with a backstory. The young viewers are told that Assoud entered Gaza from Egypt after Hamas knocked down the border wall in January. The wooden key he wears round his neck, he says, is the key of return, to reclaim Jerusalem from the Zionists.
We educate our children about loyalty, love, understanding, and hard work, nothing more. We also teach them that we have lands stolen by the criminal Zionists.
The rabbit replaces Nahul the bee, who gets his fun from tormenting cats and from throwing stones at a caged lion. The children get to watch Nahul's antics for several minutes before the show delivers the moral of the story. Don't try this at home. But Nahul didn't leave the show because of his naughty behaviour. The young viewers are told that the cuddly bee died because the Israeli siege on Gaza prevented him from reaching a hospital. The overtly political message and the use of violence has made the show controversial. But the programme makers are unapologetic about how they approach their younger audience.
We want to have children involved with the channel, and we care about their reaction to our programs. So we have live shows to make sure that the message is relayed the way we intended.
Perhaps the most famous scene from the children's show, a Mickey Mouse look-alike being beaten to death by an Israeli. It could be a case of television imitating life. After all, death and violence lurk around every corner in Gaza. But there are concerns both inside and outside Palestine about the long-term effects this will have on young minds. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.